At this time, is the state going to have an opening?
No, Your Honor.
Is the defense going to have an opening?
No, Your Honor.
All right. We will proceed with the presentation of the evidence. Would the state like to call its first witness?
State calls James Casey to the stand.
Thank you. Mr. Casey, if you could please come forward. Mr. Casey, you will remember that you remain under oath, sir. Thank you. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Dahl.
Thank you, Judge. James, please talk to the jurors about how this crime has affected you emotionally, physically, financially.
Emotionally, I'll start with that. I've had to retire from the police department because of this. I've suffered PTSD. I have, when I first got out of the hospital, I would go weeks with sleeping for an hour or two. I just could not sleep. I have, as I explained to you in the beginning of it all, or when I was testifying, I have medical issues as far as I cannot have an MRI because of the bullet fragments in my head. My nose, I have trouble breathing at times. So I guess that would be, so it was the most physical. I mean, you can look at me, I got scars on my face. You know, I have prosthetic teeth, so I can eat. You know, I can never chew gum. You know, I used to love chewing gum. I can never chew gum again.
Talk to us about, let's talk specifically about the prosthetic teeth. Is that a daily reminder of this crime?
Oh, absolutely. I have to soak them in Polydent like they were dentures. I have to, you know, I have to be very cautious if I don't eat with them because I have it's like a metallic piece that covers the roof of my mouth. So it's almost like a shield over that part that they grafted over. I have to be really cautious with eating any kind of sharp type food, chips, because if it pokes that hole, they call fistulas, and I've had to have them go in there and take skin, and they have to graft skin off pieces of my mouth and recover it over. So I have to be very cautious what I eat. When I go out to eat, I have to, when I leave, I have to go into a bathroom. I have to wash my teeth off because stuff will stick to it. It's just very uncomfortable. It's just not, you know.
How has this affected your relationship with your family members?
Well, I guess, you know, the tough part is, it was hard in the very beginning. The good part of it is I think at times it brought us closer, so that was decent, but the tough part was, I'll give you my kids. They live out of state, so when my two kids, they arrived at the hospital Saturday night when I was there, when I was taking off the tube. My oldest son, who was 14, he was 15 then. He and my youngest son, Brandon, they were 15 and 11. My oldest son, when DPS called and told him that I had been shot in the head, he went on the computer to try and find any information, and the only thing he could find was the audio call that you guys heard. So he has no idea, and he heard my dad basically has been shot in the head, and they had no information. My youngest son, Brandon, when he came to the hospital and saw me, I remember he basically jumped on the side of, he jumped on the, I asked him, he was just stuck there looking at me, and I told him to come over, and he laid in the bed, and he buried his head, and all I could feel was underneath, I was just getting wet with him crying, and he was just pleading with me. He's like, "Dad, you're not dying, are you? Please tell me you're not dying." And I was like, "No, Brandon, I'm out of the woods. I'm not dying. You're okay." That was very hard. when I remember my father, he's in his 70s, he, you know, I was probably a day out of the hospital, and I remember he collapsed in my arms crying, and I'm trying to hold him up, and I'm as weak as I can be. So it took a toll on all of my family. It was, you know, my wife told me, which there are times that I don't remember, but I do remember, she's told me that I could be very nasty to her when I was under sedation. I didn't know that. I don't remember that. I do remember a anesthesiologist coming there telling me one time they have to hold me down when I come out of anesthesia because I become very violent and very aggressive. So, so she took the brunt of that. That wasn't deserved. So.
Talk to us about the pain that you endured.
Like I said, the worst pain I had was when they grafted that skin. That 155 stitches was unbelievable. I couldn't sip water. My first few days out, like I said, when I would eat, when I was first able to eat, like I said, I'd have to take syringes, and I'd have to run them up that hole in my nose to get stuff coming out of my nose because I get food particles up there. So I forget what was that.
How has this affected Troopers Cruz and Alfano?
Well, they both, I know they've both had a really tough time with it. They both have medically retired from the force from that. You know, as I said when I was up here the first time, I heard a lot of stuff that I had never heard before. I always wondered, when I looked at Ray, when I went back to work a year and a half later, he'd always look at me if I was in a traffic stop or somewhere in that area. He'd always kind of look at me like, why? And I never really grasped why he was doing that until I heard him the other day. I didn't know he was pulling basically pieces of my mouth out of myself so I could breathe. So now I have a better grasp on why he was always like that.
Is there anything else about what you've had to endure related to these crimes that you think is important?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me was anybody who's known me growing up, I always wanted to be police from the time I was little. And this is not the way I wanted to end my career. I didn't want to end it at his hands, especially. You know, and you know, I'm glad this is done with, but, you know.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any cross-examination? Thank you. That does conclude your testimony. Thank you very much. You are excused. Ms. Dahl, do you have any additional witnesses?
No, thank you.
All right. Mr. Lorenz, are you calling any witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
All right.